Please welcome Lily to the microphone. Give it up for her. How fun. Aren't drivers in Denver just the worst? My friend was visiting from DC last week, and I'm driving, and someone cuts me off, and someone just sort of teeters in between their lanes. And I turn to him and I say, "Is it the weed? I don't know." And he says, everyone thinks that the drivers in their city are the worst. But luckily, I have this really convenient hand gesture to use in such a circumstance. And it's not what you think. It's not aggressive. It's more perplexed, like, what would propel you to do such a thing with such a giant piece of metal with your person in it in this temporal existence? And it's the wrist up. So it's the, really? Really? And it's surprisingly effective, and I get a lot of really interesting, a lot of positive responses. This guy cut me off once, and I was driving, and so I gave him the really with one hand, and I don't remember exactly how it happened, but he communicated to me that it was an accident, him cutting me off, and so I communicated to him with a wave that it was okay that he had cut me off after communicating to me that it was an accident. And it's really useful for me because there's this other gesture we can do with our hands when we're driving, a certain finger that communicates a certain something more aggressive that I will never do again, and here's why. I'm visiting my sister in Atlanta. It must have been quite a few years ago. I was in my early 20s, and she had this apartment building where you drive around the garage of the apartment building to park on the floor where your apartment is. And so we're driving around, and she lives towards the top, and we're going around, and we see this sports car careening towards us so fast that we both scream together. And if I were driving, I would have honked, but I wasn't driving, and so I did what made sense to me to do, and I flicked the guy off. And we come around to the top, and we park, and we sort of take a deep breath, sort of, oh man, that was intense, and I get out of the car, and my sister sees the sports car come around and park beside us. And so she locks herself in the car. So I'm getting my things together, and I turn around to see a giant man towering over me, barreling down on me with, cover your ears if you don't like cuss words, screaming, "You cunt," to my face. "You don't know what you did. You don't know what you created." And he's in my face, and nothing like this has ever happened to me before. I'm, in my late 20s, I'm a woman, I don't know. And I look to my big sister for support, and she's sitting locked in the car, facing forward. So glad she was there to help me or protect me. And so I turn back around to the guy. I take a deep breath, and as calmly as I can explain, I explain to him what I explained to you. You came around really fast. We both screamed. If I were driving, I would have honked, but I wasn't driving, and so that's what happened. And I'm really sorry if I offended you. And it didn't stop him for a second. You don't know the consequences. You don't know what you did, et cetera, et cetera. And he's just there, and I feel so alone in this moment. And I wonder, is this guy going to hit me? And it's so perplexing that this is even happening, but my natural reaction is to think he's trying to get me to be aggressive back at him. And so what I can do is just sort of posture my body away from him. And so I start, I say I apologize, and I start sort of leaning away, and eventually he gets that he's not going to get what, this rise or whatever that he wants from me. And he says his final word, and he gets his sports car, and he drives away really quickly again. And the second he leaves, I just break down in tears because it was so intense keeping my cool through such this rage and sort of feeling unsafe. And through that whole night and the whole next day, I just keep feeling unsafe. Like, he knows where we are. He knows what her car looks like. He probably lives in this apartment building. He talks of all these consequences. Are they going to come, And they don't, thankfully. And I call my mom and I tell her about this whole story, this guy and this thing. And she says, "Never flick off anyone in the South because they all have guns." And I think, people have guns and they have aggression everywhere. So, probably I'll never flick off anyone again. So if you cut me off in Denver, number one, I'll probably honk. But if not, you'll probably get the wrist. Thank you.